Hello, people out there, and I am Dr. Dan Kalish, and welcome to our longevity mini-series. Whoa, what's that? Well, we have launched a longevity certification class, and if you're in the mood for learning everything you ever wanted to know about a functional medicine approach to longevity, you're in the right place because I've been obsessing on this topic for yeah. Let's say honestly, 14 to 15 years. And I put all that energy into this 1 year longevity certification training program. We just wrapped up the very first section of it on cardiometabolic health, and we had amazing reviews from the students that signed up for it. And this next one that's coming up in this series, so it's a 4-part thing, you can do. You can do the whole year and do all 4 parts, or you can do one part at a time. The next one coming up is gut and brain. And that's going to be like ridiculously intense. So today is just an introduction to this longevity course that I have designed, and to give you an idea about what the heck you'd be getting into if you want to sign up for it. And we're going to start off today by talking about neuroinflammation and the microbiome, the gut-brain connection. And how can it be that so many people have anxiety and depression that just goes away when you fix their gut? And how can it be that so many people have digestive problems that go away when you deal with the brain and the stress factor? It's super common. In fact, it's not common. It's like human nature, I don't know. I've been doing this for over 30 years. You just see this with everybody. So I'm glad the science has finally caught up with it. Um, Here are the options if you're interested in doing the coursework with me. We have the longevity certification that starts May 27th. That is a 1-year program, and it includes microbiome and brain, toxins and detox. That's also got some hormones and immune in there, and cardiometabolic health. Okay, and if you're interested in doing the whole year-long thing, you can get a discount. You can scan that. You'll be getting this in an email form coming up soon as well. And each of these modules is, let's just say, robust and intense, and that's ridiculous amount of content. But it's a complex subject and I want to cover it really thoroughly. And so there's that option if you want to do the whole year, okay, and you get a discount. If that's like too much for you to deal with right now, I get it. Maybe you're busy. Maybe you just want to do the gut brain part. So you can just do that part by itself as well. Just the gut brain part, which is starting May 27th. That's the one that's coming up. And for that one, you can scan these QR codes and you also get a discount with that. Okay, so let me just talk a little bit about what's in the classes for a second. The first section, the gut brain section, if you sign up for the whole year, we get into microbiome and brain. I'm sorry, the different modules. If you do the whole year, we get into microbiome and brain, then we do detoxification and toxins. That's a really depressing section, but it's the reality of what's happening out in the world there. Everything from heavy metals to mold. And then we look, in the third section, we look at hormone optimization and a pretty beefy section on genomics. Pretty excited about that. And then the last section in the full year series is cardiometabolic health and mitochondrial function. I don't know what to say except for it's all lab-based. It's the kind of origins of functional medicine applied to a longevity model. Again, if that year-long thing is too much, you can just sign up for the microbiome and brain health part only. And that part, and this is what's in that section that's coming up May 27th. So either do the whole year or just sign up for one. If you like it, you can sign up for the rest of them later. That's fine. You can do them one at a time. You get a bigger discount, obviously, if you sign up for the whole year at one time. The gut-brain axis, microbiome testing, inflammation, just a ridiculous section, probably the most intense section on actually how to do neurotransmitter programs. Never really taught that before. So it's all the amino acid things. I spent almost 20 years looking at this problem and I never really taught it in its comprehensive way as this class. Neurotransmitter balances, how to really use 5-HTP, tryptophan, tyrosine, mucuna, all the different amino acid testing, metabolic, metabolites for neurotransmitters, just kind of putting that whole picture together. It is complicated and it's not an easy thing to learn, but it's essential. You got to be able to fix people's brains. So anyways, I finally put that together in this class. So check it out, either the module by itself or the whole year, and let's get into the content for now. So I want to introduce what's in the class and you get a feel for it. And then I have a couple cases that I pulled up so we can look at a couple cases and try to learn a few things and then apply a few things in the cases so you can see what the real classes are like. So the real certification program is, lectures like we're about to do now, and then there's cases, but the cases are the ones that you guys are submitting, and we're reviewing your cases in real time and design programs for your folks, for yourself and for your patients as well. So today we're going to kind of focus on just this isolated little thing about neurotransmitter / inflammation / microbiome imbalances, because that's kind of like a core concept. And then how does that manifest? People get overweight, they get tired, they get depressed, they crave alcohol, they crave sugar, they get anxiety, they have panic attacks, they can't sleep. They have body pain, inflammatory disorders, just bad thing after bad thing. Sometimes they have all of these things at the same time. And so we have to get in there and try to sort this out. And there's all kinds of triggers. What I like about functional medicine is that we can extract models and then take all the information in the integrative and natural medicine world and apply it to a model. And so the model that we're really talking about for inflammation that I think is the best is, Dr. Robert Navio's work. Many of you probably heard of him. He came up with the concept of the cell danger response. Here's his original article there. If you haven't read it, you should definitely download and read that. You can get it for free online. It's all over the internet. And he laid out a description of how the mitochondria get screwed up, what they are responding to, and then in turn what they do. And the gist of it is that when the mitochondria get screwed up and damaged, they turn into little inflammatory hubs. They become little flamethrowers. If you've ever watched a World War II movie, you don't want to be the guy with the flamethrower on the other end of that thing, right? Or if any of you saw Quentin Tarantino fans, there's a flamethrower scene in his recent movie about Charles Manson. I don't want to spoil it, but it's a really great scene at the very end of the movie. So flamethrowers are bad, right? They spit out flame at you, and it's not a good thing. Mitochondria turn from friendly, really pleasant, nice, friendly, supportive, energy-producing little organelles into flame-throwing, crazy town organelles, and that's what Dr. Robert Navio has described to us. So with this, once this gets started, you got inflammation everywhere. It could start off coming from your gut, but now if your mitochondria are getting involved, you're going to have inflammation all over. It could also come from the initial source of the inflammation, could come from toxins. It could come from emotional stress. We had a patient in the mentorship group this morning, and the woman is 63 years old now, but when she was 6 years old, her mother committed suicide. And then another family member committed suicide when she was a little girl. So, I mean, there's not much hope for her to have anything but an inflamed brain, right? When you go through that kind of emotional trauma as a young child. But more often, we're thinking of gut inflammation in terms of this section of the class, gut inflammation triggering this response. And what's that from? Infections, foods, lack of short chain fatty acids, all these microbiome related problems that create an inflammatory response that's mediated through the mitochondria and through the adrenals to a certain extent too, that then just becomes a thing. And once that becomes a thing, now your brain's inflamed, even though it started down below in your gut. And then if that wasn't bad enough, there's this whole inflammation just because you're getting older problem. Right? And here, this is a great article. Aging is characterized by systemic chronic inflammation. How depressing is that? Which is accompanied by cellular senescence. Okay, that's not good either. Organ dysfunction and age-related diseases. So let's say this again. Aging is characterized. This is just a natural, it would be like, I don't know, a lemon is characterized as being sour, right? It's just a part of aging. Aging is characterized by systemic chronic inflammation. That's just what happens as you get older, which is accompanied by cellular senescence. That's an important line too, because cellular senescence, we'll get into that. If you don't know what that is, we'll describe that in a second. Organ dysfunction and age-related diseases. So we want to stop or reduce the aging-related chronic inflammation. We want to stop and reverse the cellular senescence, And we certainly want to stop the organ dysfunction. And that in itself is basically, we want to reverse age. We want to not be inflamed, not have cellular senescence. And how do we accomplish that? We can do that. I mean, if you look at the average person now and how screwed up their body is, this is not like a heavy lift, okay? We can do this. This is what functional medicine was designed to do, was to identify hidden sources of inflammation in the gut from environmental toxins, identify hidden sources of inflammation, and reverse them. That's the whole point, in my mind, of functional medicine in the first place. It just so happens to also be the main issue with longevity. They have this term, I didn't like this at first, but I've grown to like it. It's called inflammaging. The first time I heard somebody say that, I thought they were misspeaking or had a lisp or something, but no, it's like a real thing, inflammaging. So it's inflammation that happens as you're aging. And there's all kinds of science on this. It's crazy what people are doing. There's like massive research organizations that are looking into this now. And here we are, little old functional medicine practitioners, just happening to have focused on this for like the last 60 years. So give me a break. So this is the terms that we want to get familiar with. Senescent cells, okay, senescent cells are kind of stuck. They're in a bad way and they're stuck and they're generating bad stuff, okay? And then we already talked about the cell danger response. So we're going to tie all this in together. But inflammation and senescent cells are extra bad because both of those are going to majorly accelerate your aging process. And the whole cell danger response is a description, blow by blow, of senescent cells and how we can start to reverse that whole process. So, cells can replicate a certain number of times. I think it's like 50 times or something. And then they just kind of run out of juice. And they just like, I don't really want to replicate anymore. I don't really know what to do anymore. And I'm just going to kind of stay stuck in my own little shell. You know people like that. There's like, you always have some neighbor, right? They won't leave their house. They're just like, I'm kind of frozen in 1963 or something. And they're just like stuck. So cells get like that. And then our job is to like unsenescence them, to like get rid of those senescent ones, break them down, tear them apart, and then rebuild so we have fresh, new, happy cells. So that's one of the things that we need to do to help prevent aging. And there's, again, like oodles of research on this, but let's just look at the basic model here because it's pretty interesting. So as you get older, you're more likely to have cells that are senescent. They're just wandering around, not doing the right thing anymore. However, it also ties back into infection. So infections can make for more senescent cells. Immune failure can make for more senescent cells. Being overweight can make this happen more. Stress can make this happen more. If you're diabetic, this will happen more. If you're inflamed, this will happen more. But then the problem is, once you get the senescent cells that are these little zombies, right, wandering around, then they create more inflammation. That's their job, is to create inflammation. So you get this back and forth. You can see all these arrows are bidirectional for the most part, except for aging. Aging is going one direction, but we want to make that arrow go the other way. That's the whole point of longevity programs. And what we don't want to do is get overly inflamed, have age-related diseases, and end up dying when you're like 76 years old or something like that. That's on my mind now because Norm just died. If you're a Cheers fan, I think that's sad. Norm was a cool guy. I loved that show when I was a kid. And Norm just died. He was 76. I was too young. He should have lived a lot longer than that. Okay, so we want to stop cell senescence. There's two big papers that came out that you kind of got to read, and they're maybe take you an hour or two to get through, but it's worth it. So there's the original Hallmarks of Aging paper. I think it was 2014. And then they did a revised new Hallmarks of Aging paper. And the first one that came out sort of set the stage for a lot of the research that's happened on longevity and anti-aging since then. I mean, to the tune of billions and billions and billions of dollars are being pumped into this now, because there's a lot of really wealthy people that want to live a long time, so they're willing to fund this kind of research. It's kind of, but anyways, we can use this for the betterment of humankind too, not just to preserve, a bunch of billionaires so they can go into space or something a few times and have fun, right? This is like something we can apply to all of our patients just so people can be healthier and have a happier life. But one of the big things about the new hallmarks of aging is that they added one new thing. Do you guys know? Well, they added a few new things, but does anybody know the thing they added that's totally like the most common functional medicine term of all time? See if anybody gets this one right, type it in. Okay, this is the most prestigious group of scientists talking about longevity research. They added dysbiosis as a new category. How cool is that? Because, as they said, there's so much research on dysbiosis being so important, they felt like they had to add it. Okay, so chronic inflammation and the hallmarks of aging. Again, this is from that paper. Here's an image, which is a nice summary of the hallmarks of aging, if you're not familiar with this yet. So here's our dysbiosis. That's one of the new ones, okay? And dysbiosis causes chronic inflammation, and chronic inflammation causes dysbiosis. Loss of proteostasis. It's just a fancy way of saying your proteins aren't working really great anymore. Genome instability, that's kind of obvious, right? Your genes are like unstable. Don't want that. Telomere attrition, telomeres, you want them long and healthy, long telomeres, long life. You don't want them getting shortened. Shortens your life. Epigenetic alterations, so what's above the genes is turning the genes on and off. Not all genes in the body, but many of the genes in the body can be turned on or off by lifestyle. By eating a big salad can affect your genes, right? So epigenetics refers to genes being turned on or off, and we can control a lot of this switching of genes on and off by our lifestyle. You can just have a pleasant thought and turn genes on and off. Disabled macroautophagy, that's a complicated way of saying autophagy, because there's different kinds of autophagy, but autophagy is just breaking things down, right? Recycling things. Think of it as recycling. A deregulated nutrient sensing, again, that's a fancy way of saying mTOR and insulin, which is a fancy way of saying eating protein and eating carbs. So if you're eating too much food, basically, especially if you're eating too many sweets and carbohydrates, you're going to get deregulated nutrient sensing big time. And if you don't eat enough protein, you're going to have that problem too. Mitochondrial dysfunction, there's our cellular senescence. Again, the cells that are just stuck, exhausting your stem cells, that's not a good thing. Cells not communicating well, and that's the new series. The idea being that chronic inflammation both creates and is impacted by each one of these hallmarks of aging. So it stands to reason, if we can reduce inflammation, we can extend our health in all these different ways at the same time, just by reducing inflammation. Which makes you wonder, it makes you think that too about, some of the supplements that we use, and how important are anti-inflammatory products. They're like the most important. This always sticks in my head from Michael Greger. If you don't know Michael Greger, he's a famous vegan doctor guy, but he's researched he spent his whole life researching nutrition basically, and he's extremely smart. His two you must-haves, you have to have because of how they just have a massive impact on inflammation: curcumin and flaxseed. And both of them are anti-inflammatory. This is the stuff that keeps us alive. The labs that we want to think about, everything from C-reactive protein to homocysteine, calprotectin, the omega-3 index, cytokine panels, organic acids, and metabolomics. So all of these are looking at inflammation or inflammation-related problems. And so you can track patients in a lot of different ways. Some practitioners may order all of these. Some of you may focus on certain areas. I'm going to show you a couple of commonly done labs in a minute when we look at the lab section. In fact, we could pull up one of the cardiometabolic labs too if you want to see those. But most of the labs that we look at, the lab markers that you look at for even for cardiovascular health, are going to have an inflammatory tie-in, right? Like C-reactive protein, homocysteine, insulin levels, etc. And so it's just global. And then here's another slide on testing. And let's break this one down for a minute. And then I'm going to skip a few slides. I put some extras in here just in case. But on the GI side, there's some obvious inflammatory markers like calprotectin. Secretory IgA is actually an immune marker, but if it's out of balance, the person's got some inflammation going on too. If gliadin markers are high, anti-gliadin markers are high, then food is triggering inflammation. So you can have an immune response that's related to inflammation, a food response that's related to inflammation, or something like calprotectin that's more general. Okay, so you can see gut-related inflammation pretty easily on all the different labs that we do. And I'll show you an example of that in a minute. You can do cytokine panels if you're into that. You can do the omega-3 index and look at omega-3s and omega-6s to figure out if there's inflammation that you could get under control from simply reducing omega-6s, increasing omega-3s. Talk about low-hanging fruit. I mean, that works every single time. And if you have a lot of inflammatory fats and not enough anti-inflammatory fats, then you're going to be inflamed, basically. And how hard is it to take fish oil, you know? Of course, oxidative stress, when it's high, means there's extra inflammation as well. So markers like 8-OHDG are going to show you high oxidative stress if it's positive, and it's also going to indicate that the person's inflamed. And then you can get into organic acids testing. So my favorite probably is a quinolinic acid, because that's a marker of specific, not only just inflammation, but specifically brain inflammation. So if quinolinic is high, your brain is inflamed, and that's a problem, right? Lipid peroxides, also, this would be oxidative stress happening to lipids. But why is that so important? Well, your omega-3s are the main anti-inflammatory fatty acids. And if your lipid peroxides are high, what's happening? They're getting oxidized or damaged. So now you're getting your anti-inflammatory protective omega-3s getting nuked because you've got a lot of oxidative stress that's affecting your lipids. Okay, you see how those are tied together? High lipid peroxides means that omega-3s are potentially getting ripped apart or damaged. And so if you have both of these things at the same time, that'd be horrible. Low omega-3s, meaning you don't have enough of the anti-inflammatory fats that are so important, and then high lipid peroxides, meaning that the fats that you do have are getting oxidized or damaged. That's like extra bad. Talk about inflammation. And how do you fix that? You give CoQ10 or vitamin E to lower the lipid peroxides, and you give omega-3s to bring the omega-3s up. Pretty straightforward. And then you stop and you retest after 6 months. Glutathione status is important too. So we have all kinds of ways of looking at this with the labs. Just pick the ones that you like, or do them all. Okay, a few more minutes of slides, then I promise we're going to look at some cases, and then we can have questions at the end. So, cell danger response. What is that really? When our cells sense that there's a problem, your mitochondria, which are just like living their lives, they're dealing with like glucose and fatty acids, and they're taking nutrients and they're creating energy, and you breathe in, 90% of that oxygen goes to your mitochondria to complete the electron transport chain, and they're just chugging along, doing their thing, making energy, keeping us slender and happy, and your brain is working great, your heart is working great because you've got healthy mitochondria. And then something bad happens, like you get a gut infection, or your mother-in-law visits. I'm assuming you don't like your mother-in-law. That was a joke. But yeah, it could be emotional stress. It could be dietary stress, could be an infection. Usually the model that they use the most often is an infection. And then what happens? Your mitochondria go ballistic and they become flame throwers. And Dr. Navio maps out each one of these steps. Your body shifts, and rather than using the oxygen for energy production, you start to create self-generate oxidative stress. You create reactive oxygen species, ROS, in order to defend the cell. You cram inflammatory fatty acids into the membranes. You spill out ATP. This whole idea of making energy is shot now. This cell is now in battle mode. It's in defense mode. It's in attack mode. It's trying to protect you. If there's a virus that's inside the cell, it doesn't want the cell to, spread that. So it's signaling to other cells around it that there's something really bad happening, and it's creating this self-destructive process. But the key point that we can just dwell on, it's complicated. There's like 8 steps right here. But the key things we should remember is the 2 of them. One is that you generate inflammatory fatty acids when this is happening. So you're getting inflamed, and you're generating oxidative stress on purpose. So you're doubly getting inflamed, double inflammation. And the mitochondria are doing this on purpose to create a problem because your body doesn't want that cell to continue as it is. And this is a complicated slide anyways, but we're not going to go through the whole thing. But just so you can see, this has all been mapped out in great detail by Navio. There's a cell danger response 1, there's a second phase, there's a third phase. And what we're worried about is when we get stuck in a cell danger response where all that's happening is inflammation getting spewed out of the cells. That's a really big problem. Okay. And that can get, again, activated by infection, by exposure to toxins, by all these different things. And once it's going and these cells are not turning over, then you have a big problem. What should happen is you go from this inflamed initial response to a restoring response, where now the body's like, oh, okay, the infection's gone. Now we're going to repair and rebuild everything that got trashed. And then in the third phase, all those rebuilt cells learn how to talk to each other again. They start to learn how to communicate. And then you're right back to being healthy again. So you get a virus, you're sick for 3 or 4 days, you're inflamed, you feel like crap, your brain doesn't work that great, all these things are happening. But then you clear it, you repair everything, you rebuild everything, everything starts to communicate again, and you're back on track. What we're worried about is when you stay stuck in this inflammatory phase, because then that's going to accelerate aging. And that's basically a very complex model for describing different ways that cells can become senescent. They get stuck. And here's some more things from Navio, and you can see the cell danger response 1 is associated with chronic infections, asthma, allergies. The cell danger response 2 associated with metabolic syndrome, inflammatory bowel disease. It's getting worse, right? Cell danger response 3 associated with chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, chronic pain syndrome, POTS, and all these things. So you can have cells stuck in any one of these stages. Of course, some cells, not all of them. And what we're trying to do then is identify this through the lab testing and then reverse the person out of it. I like this as a model. It's really great because it explains chronic inflammation. And it also says that, hey, if you're infection-free, if you're eating anti-inflammatory foods, if you're doing your cold plunge every day, like I do, if you're doing your curcumin and flaxseed and you're exercising properly, you're not going to be inflamed. Not as much, and you don't have to be on this track of chronic inflammation getting worse and worse and worse as you get older. In fact, you can reverse it. You can change that. And that's the whole point of functional medicine. When I was first learning functional medicine, all the great teachers that I had only worked with really sick patients. When I walked into Dr. Timmons' office for one of the first times, I was in the waiting room and I was like, okay, this is like way over my head. And I got into the back office where he was. I was like, what's going on here? So, oh, well, that's Jerry, and I forget the other guy's name. Yeah, no, they both have terminal cancer, They both had, been given 6 months to live. So I'm working with them and trying to stop it. So he was working with people who were dying and really sick. And when I started my practice in a more aggressive way and really started to go for it, I was like, I want to work with healthier people. Like, I can't deal with this whole cancer thing. And it was just too much for me emotionally to handle that. So I've always tried to work with people who are as healthy as I can find. And I think that we can take all this technology that's been developed for really sick people, like Navio's, his main goal really of focus is a lot of it is around autism. He's treating autistic kids with all his discoveries. But we can take that technology and apply it to your average 40 or 50-year-old person, early 60s, who's pretty healthy, but wants to be even healthier and have a long, healthy life. That's kind of my goal with doing all this. Oh, this is a nice study on mitochondria as hubs of inflammation, but the trigger can be GI problems. Here's another study on how the brain works, but we don't have to get into that. So let's see. I just want to leave time for labs and questions. I think we kind of covered this one already. We covered most of this. Yeah, I think we got enough on the slides. So let me just review for those of you that joined us late. What we're actually doing here is I put together an entire year-long course on longevity. And you can sign up for the entire class at one time and you get a discount, or you can sign up for one section at a time. And so there's a microbiome and brain health section. Each one of these sections is intense though. There's a lot of material here to get through. It's also accompanied by live calls, so you can submit labs and ask questions because I really want people to learn this stuff as well as you can. And then there's a section on toxins and detoxification, which is brutal but important to learn. And then there's a section on hormones and immune and Genomics is in there as well, and then a section on cardiometabolic health and mitochondrial function. So it's 4 different modules. You can sign up for the whole thing if you want, and you're welcome to ask questions about it. That's kind of what this session is for. Or you can sign up just for one at a time. And we have, starting on May 27th, the microbiome and brain health part of this. So if you're interested to do one module at a time, you can do that, or you can sign up for the whole year. Regardless, it's starting May 27th, which I believe is like a week from today. Okay, so let's see. Let's look at a case or two, and then we can open it up for questions. So if you have questions, just type them in, and I'll get to as many as I can. All right, let's pull up the cases here. So let's start off with a GI one. Here's a brand new one. So this is from Diagnostic Solutions. It's a GI test called the GI map. Many of you are probably familiar with it. We had probably 6 of these this morning in class, maybe more. Look at these all day long. So this particular patient has C. diff. Would that cause inflammation? Probably. Yeah, definitely. This person has not so bad microbiome. Well, that's good. Oh, they have some dysbiosis. Is that going to cause problems? Absolutely. Remember, we just said the new hallmark of aging is dysbiosis, so that's kind of like obvious. And then let's look at these markers here. So steatocrit is for gallbladder function. And gallbladder, if your gallbladder's not working well, you're going to be inflamed too. Your pancreatic enzymes, that's kind of the very definition of anti-inflammatory, isn't it? That's what they are. They're used as anti-inflammatories in treatment. Okay. Let's see. Secretory IgA, we already talked about, if that's really far off. So SIG-A is tied in with cortisol. Cortisol regulates SIG-A. And one of cortisol's roles is as an anti-inflammatory, which we all know because you can use corticosteroids. If you have a bad shoulder or something, you can just inject some, of a steroid in there, and poof, the inflammation's gone like instantly before you get out of the doctor's office. So we know that corticosteroids are very powerful anti-inflammatories, and cortisol is a naturally occurring corticosteroid that your body makes, and it has a very powerful anti-inflammatory effect. It also regulates secretory IgA. So when SIG-A is off, you're almost guaranteed to have a problem with cortisol, which means you have a hormone-mediated potential inflammatory thing. And those are tied together very closely, the inflammation in the gut and problems with cortisol, which makes sense. There's calprotectin, that's another inflammatory marker. And I just want to point out that this is a new thing that just started like a month ago. So you can do an add-on to the GI map now called the stool omics, and it includes bile acids, and it includes short-chain fatty acids. This is an add-on called the stool omics. So when you're ordering your GI map, you just check the box and say, hey, I want to also do the stool omics. And this is another way to really look in depth at the microbiome. You can see the fatty acids here and the bile acids. Those are really important. They both give you like a deep status update as to what's happening with the microbiome. And I guess in the bigger picture of things, you can have dysbiosis, you can have H. pylori, you can have parasitic infections. But when you take a step back and say, what do I really need? Why is this all really happening? What's the fundamental correction that needs to happen with the gut? It's the microbiome itself. So knowing about the short chain fatty acids and knowing about the bile acids really adds a lot. And I forget what the extra cost is. It's like $100 or $150. It's not that much. So if you're doing GI maps already, add in the stool omics. Do that like 10 times, see what you think about it. You're going to learn a lot from that. And if you're not doing the GI map, then check it out. You can do that together. So anyways, this is an easy way to see sources of inflammation coming from the gut. Oh, well, let me actually, hang on a second. I jumped away from that too quickly. Let's actually use that one and see what's happening. Let me write down some notes here. Bile acids look pretty good. Short chain fatty acids look pretty good. Oh, that's too bad. I wish I had one that showed that they were screwed up. Oh well. But the person's low SIG-A, elastase is low. I'm just writing some notes here because I want to design a program. Elastase is low, beta-glucuronidase is high, they had dysbiosis and some kind of an infection. I can't remember what it was now. Dysbiosis and, oh, C. diff. Yeah, C. diff. Okay. So when we design the program, that will address all those things. And remember, dysbiosis is now an official hallmark of aging. Oh, that's amazing that that even happened. I can't believe how well accepted these functional medicine concepts have become. Is just frightening. Okay, so here's a Nutraval from Genova, and we're using this as an example because it's got all these things that we're talking about on it. You can see it's got the oxidative stress markers, mitochondrial markers, omega-3 markers, toxins, methylation. This kind of hits all the big topics here. All right, so let's take a look at the obvious inflammatory things. So omega-3 index is low. High, that means you're inflamed. Glutathione is low. That means you're inflamed. You have a lot of oxidative stress. Fig-Lu is high. That means that your folate is screwed up. That's a methylation problem. Let's see, lipid peroxides are high. So that's what we were just talking about. That means your lipids are getting damaged. Oh, this is an example of what I just said. I didn't pull this one up on purpose, but lipid peroxides are high. That means your lipids are getting damaged, and the omega-3 index is low. So one of your most important ways that you deal with inflammation, which is omega-3 fats, there's not enough of them in the system. And the ones that are there are getting nuked and damaged. How do you know? Because the lipid peroxides are high. That's what that means. It means that fats are getting oxidized. Glutathione is low. Okay, this is, just not a great situation to be in. So let me take some notes. So we have low omega-3s, low 3s, lipid peroxides are up, glutathione is up, down, sorry. And they got some methylation issues too, right? Okay. Any one of those things would cause inflammation, and inflammation accelerates aging. Now, if everybody that's aging right now, that's in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, is having these kinds of nutritional problems, and we see these all the time on labs, then what we think of as the normal trajectory of aging and inflammation, it's abnormal physiology, gang. That's the whole point. And no one's looking at it that way. Okay, there's problems with this person's cells. There's a nutritional biochemical imbalance here. Of course, they're going to age unnecessarily quickly. There's like at least 6 or 8, maybe 10 different reasons we just identified just from these 2 first tests for why this person is inflamed. And inflammation is driving all the hallmarks of aging. So when you step back and think about it, if we just fix these basic issues like inflammation, oxidative stress, insulin resistance, you can slow down the aging train dramatically. And almost every patient that you test is going to have a variety of these problems because people don't take very good care of themselves. I just think that escalating to, IVs, peptides, prescriptions, hyperbaric oxygen, all these other things, I'm fine with that. And I do a lot of those treatments myself. But if you're not like keeping your basic cell function healthy, then what's the real benefit of going and doing IVs every 2 weeks? I mean, there's some benefit, but not really, not the benefit you could get. So I feel like we should have normal cell physiology and a decent microbiome. And then you want to go do peptides, you want to like do plasma exchange treatments, I want to do that, by the way. You want to do like whatever you want to do that's kind of fancy, go for it. But you want to do that on top of a platform where your cells are actually working properly so you can take advantage of it. Otherwise, it's just like a problem on a problem, or it's a solution on top of something that hasn't been fixed yet. That just doesn't make sense. Okay, so let's look at this lab. And this other stuff is that you need to fix. It's just not that complicated. So you want and you can tell, like, here are the things I think you should be you should be toxin free. That seems reasonable. No mold, no heavy metals. You should be toxin free. Your microbiome should be in pretty much perfect shape. That's a basic thing. And your gut should not be inflamed, and you shouldn't be eating inflammatory foods all the time. So you need your microbiome sorted out, you need your toxins flushed out. You should have good cardiometabolic health. Like, you should be physically fit, your heart should be strong, your lungs should be strong, you should be able to handle, your food that you're eating and process it properly and not be clogging up your arteries and screwing all that stuff up. And your mitochondria need to be in top shape. Like you should have mitochondria that are like a Navy SEAL that just finished training camp. It's just like really, really strong. And then your hormones and all the brain related stuff needs to get dialed in. And that's why I set up these longevity modules on just like the bare minimum that you should have. If you look at the actual class structure, it's based around that. Okay, let me just show you one more time. Here, like you better have a healthy microbiome, like a really good microbiome, and your brain better be in tip-top shape if you want to live a long time. Those are like basics. Get all the toxins out, get all the infections out, just get yourself healthy, regulate your hormones and immune system, and then make sure your heart and lungs and mitochondria are super strong. That's kind of the whole premise of the class. Those are the basic things that should happen. And then you want to layer on top of that peptides, plasma exchange, IVs, whatever other, therapies you want to do, that's great. But don't put the complicated stuff first if your basic cells, your cell function is just like poor. This doesn't make any logical sense. You have to have healthy cells to take advantage of these other things. You can't, in other words, you can't make up for unhealthy cells by doing all these other things. You need to do the basics really well. So here, well, first of all, dysbiosis markers. So this person has dysbiosis. So right off the bat, you have to fix that to reverse the aging process. And then let's see. Unfortunately, this one does not have my favorite marker as a problem, but we could imagine it if you want. Quinolinic is not high. I wish it was. Okay, that's the neuroinflammatory marker. You do have a bunch of mitochondrial markers that are a problem here. Oh, this is great. And the glutathione marker is really far off. Okay, so now we know, we knew that already, that they have low glutathione because the glutathione levels are low. So that's another, there's maybe 3 glutathione markers on here, all of which are showing low. And the lipid peroxides are quite high, right? So let's take a moment here and design a program for this person. And once you get these basic messed up cell things fixed, then you can escalate and start to do all these other treatments. This is just round 1. But a lot of people skip round 1, and they jump ahead and they don't ever take the time to go back. All right, so let's just design a 6-month program here. You can see how this would play out. So I'm going to do it in the order of priority. So let's say glutathione is the most important thing, I would say. So glutathione, and you can get a liposomal form. If you want a brand, everybody loves the one from Quicksilver. I've never heard anyone say, I don't like that one. And most of the glutathione that's out there just tastes so nasty. And you don't have to go crazy with it, 100 milligrams twice a day. Lipid peroxides were high, so we need some CoQ10. Again, this is the longevity program. It's not a like fix my cancer program. So you can keep the dosages moderate because we're in this for the long haul. Obviously, a longevity program is not going to be like 3 months and then you're done. They had a big methylation problem. So you want to do some methylated Bs, B complex. And then if you really want to get methylation going, you got to add choline. Just a little bit. You don't have to do a ton. The mitochondrial markers were pretty screwed up, right? So I think you're going to need some magnesium in there. I usually use the glycinate form for this particular purpose, but there's plenty of other types of magnesium you can use. Magnesium deficiencies are pretty rampant. Omega-3s, and those are usually, let's say, in a 1,200 milligram capsule, something like that. I'm going to load the person up because their omega-3 index was off. So I would do a loading dose with that. I would do 2 twice a day, and then I'd say after 60 days, cut dose in half. So you start off with 2 twice a day for the first month or 2, get their levels up, then you can cut the dose back. And then some kind of a good quality multi. So that would be like their let's get things going program. And then for a GI program here, GI wellness plan, and this would be 6 months. And then what do you do at the end of 6 months? You stop and you retest their NutriVal or their omics or whatever test you're doing. So then with the GI, they had their SIG-A was off, so you got to check their adrenals. That's sort of a different problem. Their beta-glucuronidase was off. So you want to do typically some calcium D-glucarate. And again, if it's a man or a woman, it may be different and other things going on, but something along the lines of calcium D-glucarate. That's usually like twice a day. Just until you retest, that's not a forever thing. They had a dysbiosis problem in C. diff, so I would probably start off with sac-bilardi. Start off with a hefty dose and then cut back quickly after a month, let's say. After 1 month, cut dose in half. That usually flushes out the C. diff. And then separately, you'd want to do, let's say, a dysbiosis program. And the GI programs are short. There's like 2-3 months. Then you would stop, wait a little bit, and then retest. And then you want to integrate these two things together. So this gives you some big picture ideas about how you can design programs. Okay, so let's take a break from all that. And let's remind ourselves why we're here, because we want you all to sign up for the longevity certification. And we have this one coming up in a week. You can do the gut by itself, or if you're ambitious, you want to devote a year to this, change your life, you can do the whole year-long program. Okay, so let's go back and grab some questions here. We got like 10 minutes. Here. I'm probably not going to be able to get to them all because there's a ton of them. Okay, so the first one is yes. So so this class is designed for anybody. You can be medical doctor, nurse practitioner, osteopath, chiropractor, acupuncturist. We have a ton of RDs that are in the classes right now, and we have a bunch of pharmacists that have signed up. We have people all over the world that are doing it. We have people in Costa Rica, people in India. We have some doctor from Pakistan that's in the class now. We have a lot of people from United States. Welcome Americans as well, but it's like an international group. It's pretty cool. And yeah, those are the basics. So you can have any background. It's not limited to any one group of practitioners. Let's see. What patterns do we look for to see the flame-throwing mitochondrial mode? That's the whole here. That's where'd it go? Here. That's this whole section called, well, depending on what test you're doing, but for a NutrEval, cellular energy and mitochondrial markers, that whole section. If you got a major problem with your mitochondria, it's going to show up there. It's a little complicated. There's patterns. So you have to be able to recognize the different patterns there. There's patterns where the markers are all skewed low. There's patterns where the markers are high. There's patterns where they're mixed. So you have to kind of learn that one. That takes a few months to learn probably. Do you use anti-inflammatories in a flare? Yeah, for sure. If they're having a pain flare or an autoimmune flare, absolutely yes. And we were talking about this in class this morning too. One of the doctors was like, there's this one doctor was presenting a case, and then the other doctor was like, you should really use low dose naltrexone for that person. We had this whole long low dose naltrexone conversation, which was cool. So there's all kinds of ways you can deal with people who are flaring up and in a lot of pain, and LDN can work well for people. Oh yeah, how do you treat enterohemorrhagic E. coli? So that's a tricky one. If you call the lab, I think they're going to tell you it's just sort of an organism that's passing through and will take care of itself. But I found that it's positive on some really sick people. So that one has to be treated gingerly. I've only ever used the herbs with that one, but you can be pretty effective with that for sure. So if you're having someone trigger symptoms and they have a histamine-related issue and you want to do anti-inflammatories, I would go more for antioxidant type things or things that are just really just things that are going to reduce histamine. Probably you can stick with that and reduce the inflammation indirectly that way. Let's see here. So how much with the gut being a dynamic environment, how much emphasis can we put on a GI map result, which shows it's just one stool sample? Well, for that matter, like talk about a dynamic environment. Look at this test. Like, how much can you trust this test? It's just a single sample in one day. And look at all this stuff you're measuring. Don't these things move around every day? Yeah, they totally do. So you could have your NutriVal, if the person went to like a CrossFit conference and worked out every day for 12 hours for a week and then did a CrossFit competition and won, and she's like the strongest CrossFit person in North America, and then you had her do her NutriVal right at the end of that last day, it'll be totally different than if she did it 3 weeks later and she's at the beach and she's kicking back and she's like, I won the CrossFit medal and now I'm just going to rest for 3 weeks. So yeah, these tests are all highly dynamic. The stool testing, the adrenal testing, the NutriVals, the metabolomics, the organic acids, they're highly dynamic. And you got to learn all the rules about how to interpret them or you can be misled. I don't think I could summarize that in a minute other than saying you really have to study this stuff for a little while. But once you learn it, they're incredibly accurate and you can trust your life on the accuracy of these tests. You just got to know the nuances and how things move around. That's why I have year-long trainings, because it takes at least a year for people to learn that stuff. But I'm telling you, at the end of the year, you know, we graduate people who are really good at lab interpretation. They get the nuances of it. They're asking the right questions. In fact, there is a doctor this morning that asked this one question that no one had ever asked before. I was so excited that she asked this question because it showed me how smart she is and how much she's learned. I went ballistic and I answered it for like 15 minutes. It was such a great question. So we want you to like grapple with these issues and then sort them out. And that's, one of my roles really is to help you through that process. Um, let's see. Oh, calcium D-glucarate is used to lower beta-glucuronidase. There's other ways you can do it too. You can do it with general liver support also. Yeah, so yeah, Emerson Ecologics should have all of these brands. I can tell you the brands that I use the most: Thorne Research, Orthomolecular, Pure Encapsulations, Metagenics, Designs for Health, Zymogen. And every decade, there's like a brand that's like the new, really great brand. And I've been around for a long time, so I've seen like this happen a lot. The new greatest brand, hands down in my mind, the one that just like kicks ass over every other brand is Quicksilver. Quicksilver, everything they make is just like amazing. This is their decade to be the best brand. So order whatever you want that you need, whatever, just get it from Quicksilver. They have a really good product line. Yeah, so for Lina or Lina, I'm not sure how to pronounce your name, Lina. But yes, the certification is open to students. Absolutely, if you're a nutrition student or a medical student or a chiropractic student, totally welcome you. And you're also welcome, if you're interested in the course, to set up a call with me. I can describe it to you because a student is in a special and unique position to learn this work. I think that's exciting. How different is this from the mentorship? So the longevity certification probably has about 10% or 15% overlap with the mentorship. So I would say 80+% of it is completely different. Not all of it, but most of it is completely different. And then for the mentorship graduates that are on this call, or for those of you that are just in any position, I think this is a great, for the mentorship people, I designed the longevity class as the follow-up. So you're in the trenches, you've gotten all these patients better, you're doing a good job at functional medicine. We teach you that in the mentorship. Now everybody's better. What do you want to do with them? What's the next step? How do you want to take these healthy people and keep them as patients and keep getting them healthier and max out their health? That's what the longevity class is for. Okay. If you're haven't done the mentorship yet and you just want to like work with healthy people and not work with chronically ill people, then the longevity class is for you, right? The longevity class is not a how to treat chronic illness class. It's not. It's a longevity class. It's a class for people that are already pretty healthy, whether they're an old functional medicine patient and now they're better, or you're just attracting healthy people. One of my favorite doctors and my very close friend, Bill, he just told me the other day, he's had 20 new patients in the last few months, and they're all wellness patients. He's so happy about that. They're all healthy people who just want to stay healthy in their 40s and early 50s. And we should all be working with people who are already healthy and want to stay that way. I think just focusing only on chronic illness limits the number of people we can help, and it makes no sense to me. So that's why I'm doing this longevity thing, because I think it's important. We want to keep people from getting sick in the first place. That's a much bigger gift than waiting until people are sick and then trying to fix them. Okay. So for dysautonomia, what are the best tests and markers to look for? Yeah, so my general workup for any of that, but now we're right into chronic illness. It's not a longevity question, but I'm going to answer it anyways. Would be an adrenal lab, a gut test, and a metabolomics test. That's the starting point for any of these chronic people. An adrenal lab, a gut test, and an organic acids profile. Okay. Which order of tests is best? So let me say this again. Adrenals first, then gut, and then organic acids. Never start with heavy metals, never start with mold. There's a million reasons why. Never start with heavy metals, never start with mold. Never start with heavy metals, never start with mold. I'm going to write that on a t-shirt and print it. Never start with heavy metals, never start with mold. That's not okay. You want to start with adrenals, gut, and organic acids. There's a million reasons why that's true, okay? When do we teach organic acids again? Well, that's a good question. It's later this year, I think. For that, let me go to the website. I don't have all this memorized. I just work here at this point, I just try to keep the ship going with my teaching, but I don't have all this stuff. So here we go. If you go to the website, longevity. Oh, for organic acids. So we have organic acids as part of level 1. So that's a level 1 question. So that's not longevity, right? But we have organic acids through level 1, and that's coming. Oh, here you go. Yeah, that's in October if you want to just do organic acids. That's not part of the longevity program. That's part of our level 1 certification. That's an entry level class for folks. If you want to do level 1 certification, that's great too, but it's totally different. The longevity class is the deep end of the pool. The longevity class is like 10 times more intense content than the level 1 is. Level 1 is for people that are just getting started. Yes, you can use the CDR protocols alongside biologics, absolutely. Do we have, oh, we're out of time. I'm sorry, I couldn't get to all the questions. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the talk. I will catch up with you next time. We have another one of these in the longevity series coming up. I don't know what the schedule is, but in the next week or two. It's probably next week sometime, okay? So keep a lookout for that one. And we'll talk then. It's gonna be on muscle loss. All right, bye for now.